Hey, welcome back to the channel. Doing my, I guess what I'm starting here is a follow-up to my original Young Guns video. We're gonna make this a regular segment, and every 3 to 6 months, we'll say. Right now, this is about the 5-ish month mark, 5.5 month mark. We'll take a look at how population of PSA graded cards relate and the price are reacting in the market. Because, you know, as I've been doing more research on the topic, I've noticed some, I guess, very clear price trends, both over the last 6 months and also during the life cycle of a given card. And I figured it'd be good to kind of walk you guys through what I'm seeing so we can try to apply that to number one, this year's crop of cards that'll come out, and how we see the the pricing of the Young Guns that have been in the market for a while evolving. So we're going to take this video in two parts. I'm going to start with the most recent group, right? So 2022 Young Guns, and we'll work backwards. What I did is I identified a few noteworthy population jumps over the last 6 months in terms of grading, and we're going to look at the price charts of those guys over the course of the last 6 months to 6 years, depending on depending on who we're talking about. We'll start with 2022 now and end up going all the way back to 2013 and a few of the key rookies from that year. So let's take a look at some worksheets and price charts. Okay, so now we're looking at 2022. The two top movers, or at least from a volume perspective in grades, right? Matt Boldy, 1,095 new cards graded since May. Matty Beniers, 1,610 cards graded since May. You can see the ratio of 9 versus 10 keeps going down, or 10 versus 9 keeps going down, which makes sense as you grade older cards. Less 10s become prevalent. When we look at Matt Boldy's price performance, right, he started kind of around the 200 range, as we look back to December of last year, and the cards settled right around the 100 range. I think the volume of 1,000 cards coming in the last 6 months, and probably another 1,000 going to come in the next 6 months, definitely putting a ceiling on that card. I don't expect it to go back up anytime soon. Shifting to Matty Beniers, he started way high, right? 400, 500, 600, you can argue, back in January of this year. And that card settled in somewhere in the neighborhood of 125 right now. 1,600 cards coming in over the last 6 months. That's definitely going to put a ceiling on this one. So I don't see upside in this guy anytime soon. It'll be interesting to see how many cards get graded of his over the next 6 months. All right, let's move into 2021. Cole Caulfield is the big one here. Almost 2,700 cards graded in the last 6 months. Zegras had almost 1,300, and Raymond and Mo Sider, 770 and 985. Not doing too bad. Caulfield is the one that really makes me nervous here, given that influx and the fact that he's not really doing that well. His cards kind of were around the $700 mark. It settled around 300 here, and I think that's going to be a high point for a little while. We go over to Zegras. Zegras started off crazy, back in May of 22, around $600. That card settled in around 125. You're noticing a pattern here. Cards start off really high and then settle in around $100. Lucas Raymond starting around 300 and settling in now $60. Quite different, but the same pattern. And finally, and kind of one of the most curious ones, is Mo Sider. I think everybody got all excited when he won the Rookie of the Year, right? People were piling in with his cards. Cards were around $500, but quickly went down to now right around the $100 mark. And I think what you're seeing is a pattern where cards really start off at a very high level and then ultimately settle down at least 50% less. So keep that in mind as you're prospecting for 2023 Young Guns. All right, let's roll back into 2020 because I think there's a lot of fun here. Lafreniere, Robertson, Kaprizov, and Stützle all are the big increases in volume. Lafreniere I put in red because I don't know why anybody is still grading his cards. The others, 1,100, 1,248, and 1,342 cards graded in the last 6 months. Quite a bit of supply coming on to the market. Let's look at Lafreniere's price chart though, because I think this is where I get scared of the Connor Bedard phenomenon. Lafreniere started around $1,500. That card has settled around $100. I'm not saying that Bedard's going to see a similar fate, but it's going to have similar hype. And the question is, how will the onslaught of supply, support his prices? Jason Robertson, a little bit of a late bloomer. I think he kind of started around 5, dipped, went back up around 5, and now is kind of around the 160-ish mark. He's got a lot of potential, but that kind of volume in, you're going to start seeing these cards stay around the $150 mark. Kirill Kaprizov, insane, 1,300, 1,400. Now, granted, that was in late 21, so there was some hype there and some of the bubble pricing. But I mean, this card is at 165, and if you, I don't know, if you bought it way back when and you bought into the hype, you're down $1,000 on one card. So just keep that in mind. Last but not least, Tim Stützle, $400 back in October of 21, settling in around 150. Lots of supply coming into the market, probably putting a ceiling on that price. All right, let's go a little further back in time. We're going to go 2019 and 2017. Jack Hughes and Tage Thompson. I guess both of these guys, I don't want to say started out slow because Jack Hughes didn't really start out slow, but there were some injury concerns, and you had time to accumulate his cards if you really wanted them. And Tage Thompson had a few years where he didn't really break out and was dealt to Buffalo, right? He originally started with St. Louis. So these charts have a different look than the others. We look at Tage Thompson, he started off at $25 back in 2020, ran up well north of $400 and has settled in the $225 range right now. Again, we'll have to see how the oncoming supply coming into the market impacts his market, but there's been some upside there. Jack Hughes came out around the $250 mark back in 19, had a brief, a brief upswing in early 2021 during a lot of the bubble and whatnot, was well over $500 during that range, and fell back down, but is now recovering because he has just been incredible this year. And I think people are starting to see that he has 130-point potential. Will that amount to his card breaking old highs and heading above $500 consistently? Time will tell. This one will be interesting to watch because I think there's some potential there for him to, his prices to keep rising. But if we get similar grading increases, it's definitely going to it's going to slow down that rise. Okay, going back a little further, mainly 16, but we're going to also go into start 2015, but only with Jack Eichel. We're saving Connor McDavid till the end. Of course, if you want to just see what I think about McDavid, fast forward this a little bit, but I think you'll be missing out on some goods. Matt Tkachuk, Austin Matthews, over 500 cards graded in the last 6 months, about 100 a month. And Eichel, close to 400, but I felt he was worth including since he just won a Stanley Cup. When we look at Tkachuk, Tkachuk has had a nice rise. He's been a little bit of a late bloomer. He kind of came into his own well after he started. That card, eclipsed probably what? It was closer to up to 300 even as at the beginning of the year.
when the Florida was making their Stanley Cup run. Settling in, around 150. We'll see how this progresses. I'm not so sure I have a really good gauge on where he's going to end up. The market in Florida, I mean, going from Calgary to Florida didn't really, I think it helped him a little, but in the end, Florida doesn't have much of a following, so I'm wondering how much demand for his cards there will be. If we shift to Austin Matthews, when his cards came out, back in 18, they were, you could have them for like 100 or 200 bucks. If you bought in there, praise the Lord, right? Because you've done really well. If you were able to sell when the cards popped up over the $2,000 mark in 21 and 22, even better. But if you're still holding on, you're doing okay in the 800 range. There's a lot of these cards still coming onto the market. I mean, Matthews is one of the top 5 players in the league, no doubt. Do I see a long-term future for his cards getting back up to that $2,000 mark? To be honest, I don't. But let's keep an eye on it. Let's monitor it and see how things progress. Jack Eichel, poor Jack Eichel. He had all those trials and tribulations with the Sabres. He finally gets moved to the Golden Knights. He wins the Stanley Cup, and what does it do for his cards? Absolutely nothing. These cards you can have right around the $150 mark, more or less. At least at the beginning of 19, which cards existed a little while back, but this chart only goes back 5 years. I think if he hasn't captured the market, and really seen demand here, I think it begs the question, what's going to really drive his value going forward? He's an amazing player, and hopefully he stays healthy, and maybe he's, the way that Vegas is playing this year, he could certainly have some more Stanley Cup wins in his future, but I guess we'll see how much that matters. All right, now we're back into 2014 and 2013, and here's where I think we have some opportunity in the longer term. Vasilevsky, Dave Pastrnak, Nathan MacKinnon, and Alexander Barkov. MacKinnon had some pretty decent increase in grading volume right around that $500 mark, but Pastrnak, Vasilevsky, while they did significantly increase from a percentage perspective, you're looking at 120, to get you to 450, but their numbers are pretty low right now, so I think there could be opportunity here. If we look at Pasternak's price chart, you're settling in the $850 range, and well profitable for those who bought in back in in 2018. His card did reach close to $2,000, and I think with a few more 50-goal seasons or even more 60-goal seasons, I think this card does have a path to approaching old highs. I don't know if it has the ability to get to $2,000 in short order, but I think the supply-demand equation is in your favor here if you wanted to consider a buy. Same thing goes for Vasilevsky, right? He's injured right now. His cards, are more or less in the $300 range, and you're looking at a guy who's a surefire Hall of Famer. He had a brief upswing above 1,000. I think the market for goalies is always questionable, but if you're going to invest in a goalie, he's the guy I think that you want to be looking at because the supply demand equation could be in your favor as well. Nathan MacKinnon, I don't know. I think he's still. I mean, he's easily one of the top 3 players in the league. If he can stay healthy, he's going to lead. He's the one who can challenge McDavid for the scoring title. Way back when, you can have his cards for $150 back in 2018. These things went up like a rocket during the bubble, well over $2,000, and it's kind of steadily, bled down right now, where you're back into the 200s or so. I actually have to look at that price because my chart didn't print it out. But I think when you look at MacKinnon and the the supply-demand equation is not quite on your side. A little better than some of the more recent years, but I think that puts a cap. It just puts a cap on the price. And last but not least, I put Alexander Barkov in here just because I think he's one of the best players in the league. He doesn't get much respect, but then again, he also doesn't stay healthy and he doesn't reach 100 points. So, is that somebody you should be buying? For the long term, probably not. But I do think there's an opportunity here to buy this card and sell it 5 years later for around the $400 mark. I do think this one hits new highs. All right, now the guy you've all been waiting for. Let's talk about Connor McDavid. His 2015 Young Guns card. Over the last 6 months, we've had 1,121 cards come onto the market. You can see in the 10 versus 9 ratio, now 1 out of every 2 comes back at 10. And now we're up to about 5,300 in total supply. His cards, are still strong. They had, if you invested, way back when in McDavid, you're doing great. If you had that foresight, the card's gone up to close to the $5,000 mark around the, in the bubble. And now they've settled right around the, in the $2,500 mark, in the $2,500 range. What really concerns me here is the supply that is coming on the market and that has come on the market over the last year. I wonder how long that'll continue, because it surprised me. Like when I saw that 1,120 cards actually came into or out of PSA grading over the last 5+ months, that surprised me and made me think that there are quite a few left on the sidelines that are going to be continuing to add to this supply. From a player perspective, there is nobody better in the NHL than Connor McDavid. He's, anybody who comes in as a generational talent, somebody like Connor Bedard immediately gets this, could he be the next McDavid? And the reality is that there is no next McDavid. Maybe there will be in another, at some point in the next 10, 15 years, but Connor Bedard is showing he ain't the next McDavid based on how he's started so far. In the end, if you want to buy one of these for your personal collection, I think, it's going to hold value. I think it will always hold a certain amount of value, probably more than any other Young Guns that are around. But if you're buying this card at $2,500 thinking you're going to sell it at 10 grand 10 years from now, I just don't think it's going to happen. I think the supply is going to cap this stuff out, and it's going to be really hard for a card like this to get back over the bubble highs. I hope you guys enjoyed all this analysis. If you're still here, my God, thank you for watching. And let me know in the comments your thoughts, whether you have any different opinions, whether you were as shocked as I was at the price charts of some of the more recent cards and how they just kind of have like a slow bleed out that continues to happen. And let me know how you're going to attack the 2023-24 Young Guns class. We'll talk about that one soon. Thanks again.